Hey everybody, I'm Dustin. I'm the Veterans Program Manager at CCUA. We're out here on location in southern Boone County putting together this video on wild edibles for our Friday feature video. We are pre-recording on Thursday evening as we are on location. Just wanted to stop and point out a couple of things that I saw here growing in a cluster all together conveniently, which isn't necessarily always the case. What we've got here is wild ginger, which is this large kind of almost heart-shaped leaf here. If you dig this up out of the ground, which I will do momentarily, if you dig that up, the root of the plant is not as big of a tuber as the ginger you would buy if you went to Gerb's or Lucky's or what have you. But if you break open that root and smell it, it smells exactly just like store-bought ginger. And if you were to wash this and process it, you could dry it, or you could use it fresh and chop it up and use it just like ginger from the store. Also, right here in this same little spot, we've got some wild onions here, which they look pretty much just like green onions you would grow in your garden. And if you dig those up pretty carefully, get up underneath of them, you will find that they look just like the green onions you would grow in your garden, and you can cook with them just like regular old green onions. And then also, just a little bitty one, this little leaf here is a ramp, which is a wild cousin to leeks, which if you are a culinary fan, you will know that leeks are a cousin to both garlic and onions, but they have a flavor that's somewhere in between. This one's very small. If you find them when they're a little bit bigger, it'd be thicker and would look more like the leeks that you find in the store. But these are a little bit trickier to come across. It's the only example I've seen out here so far on this hike. And that's just a few examples of wild edibles that you could find at your local conservation area or state park or national park land, I guess, if you're near that. And if you want to get out here and look around and you have a keen eye, you can find stuff that you can bring home and eat for dinner.
So what else are we looking for today, Dustin?
We are out here looking for morel mushrooms, as I'm sure just about everybody else in Missouri that likes to get out in the woods is doing. And then any other wild edibles that we come across. I'm hoping we might see some cattails somewhere down here in the bottomland, and I can talk about the edible parts of cattails at this time of the year. There's different parts of them that are edible at different times of the year, but we can talk about that if we run across them. And then also, maybe if we run across dandelions or some, wild herbs of some kind or another, we'll just stop and chat about those as we see them.
All right. Hello, my name is Justin. I work at the Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture. Out here with Dustin today. We're doing a little social distance hunting. So, so we're out here looking for morel mushrooms, and we just happened to come across one. So I'm going to show you here. They can be kind of hidden down in the weeds. A lot of times what I'll do is look for the very top of it. So if we peel back this fern and stuff, we'll see we got a pretty nice mushroom here, pretty fresh. So I like to take a pocket knife, cut it just above the ground there, so we're not breaking it off, still leaving that stem intact. And you'll see we've got a real nice morel mushroom. So hopefully we'll find some more of these today. We got a little rain, the temperature's right, it's that time of year. One of the best things you can do in the spring is get outside and go morel mushroom hunting. So another good tip when you're out mushroom hunting is to use a mesh bag. So I like to carry around a mesh bag. I'll put my mushrooms in here, and then hopefully as I'm walking around, I'm spreading all those spores around by carrying this mesh bag instead of a plastic bag.
All right, so hey there, it's Dustin again from CCUA. I'm out here with Justin, and I have come across a young fern that is still in its coiled up state. And these are actually, this one's a little dry, it's kind of far gone, but when you catch these when they're real fresh and green, you can pick them and eat them like asparagus. And they almost have an asparagus-like flavor. And while we're down here in this spot, I'm gonna point out sorrel, which is this heart-shaped, almost clover-like plant. which is edible. It has a little bit of a tart flavor to it, and it is high in vitamin C. So if you happen to be in a situation where you were trying to actually forage enough food to nourish yourself, sorrel would be a good additive into that forage diet because it's very high in vitamin C. We're going to talk about Mayapples right quick. Some of these might grow in your yard even, but they're definitely very prevalent in these bottomland areas that have a fair amount of moisture and they're well shaded. Pretty distinctive umbrella type leaf, usually single, but sometimes it'll have two coming off of the same stem. This is the flower bud for the Mayapple. And then we've actually found one that's got a nice bloom on it. The fruit that grows on Mayapples is edible. The caveat being that you have to let it get very, very ripe, because much like an unripe persimmon, if you eat an unripe Mayapple, you will get pretty bad stomach cramps and frequent trips to the bathroom. So make sure that if you're going to pick Mayapple fruit, that it pretty much comes off of the stem without you really having to pull it, and that's how you know that it's really ripe. If you got to tug on it to get it off of there, it's not ready. But the fruit itself doesn't show up usually till about May, hence the name Mayapple. But I thought I'd show you all the flower and what to look for, and you could always come back in a few days or weeks depending on the date in the year and check again and see if the fruit has begun to grow, to harvest it at a later time. So we're out here in some swampy bottomland in a clear area, and I just wanted to take a moment to point out the edible portion of a cattail plant. They're usually fairly small at this time of the year. I don't know if you can actually see what I'm looking at from there, but this guy right here is a young cattail, and if I can get, there we go. So this pale portion here, if you kind of peel the first couple layers off of it, wash it really well, you can saute it up and season it. It's actually fairly high in carbohydrates and starch. I just say put a fair bit of seasoning on them because by themselves they don't taste very great. Definitely wash them. I recommend soaking them actually for a while just to get the swampiness out of them before you cook them up. But yeah, if you just peel off those first couple outer layers, and you got something that's about the same taste and consistency as water chestnuts or like bamboo shoots if you're into Asian food. And they're perfectly edible and pretty good source of carbs. We just happened upon some dandelion plants. We didn't exactly expect to run into them down here in the swampy bottomland, but since the opportunity presented itself, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about the edible parts of a dandelion, starting with the flower. Need the yellow part, not the fuzzy one. There we go. So dandelion flowers, if you take all the green bits off and just leave the petals, if you get enough of them, you can soak them in water, and it'll give the water an almost a little bit of a citrusy flavor, and you put a little sugar in there and make what's called dandelion lemonade. And then the leaf of dandelions, let me find a good example for you here. I recommend harvesting them before the flowers grow. Once the flowers have grown, they tend to be a little bit bitter, much like lettuce. You want to harvest your lettuce before the flowers grow on that as well. Dandelion greens taste much like field greens, and they're good in a salad. All right, well, I've managed to come across some broadleaf plantain here. It's another wild green that is edible. This particular variety of plantain, the broadleaf, is high in vitamin A and calcium. And much like dandelions or even cultivated greens, you want to get these before they go to flower, or else they'll be very bitter. But the very young green leaves are actually tender and pretty tasty. And oh look, there's a redbud. So redbud blossoms, you can collect these. It'd be a fair bit of work to collect enough of them, but if you wanted to, you could collect enough of these redbud blossoms to make a tea if you steep them in hot water. And it's got a nice floral, slightly sweet taste, almost like rose water if you're familiar. So yeah, you can make redbud tea with those flowers. Well folks, sun's getting real low, so we're gonna call it a day we didn't have a whole lot of luck hunting mushrooms today, but benefit is we got out, we got some fresh air, got a little exercise, and there's definitely nothing wrong with just going and taking a hike in the woods while we're having this whole shelter in place on, and it's good to get out and get some fresh air. So even if you don't find any mushrooms, you still got some exercise, so you can go out and hike in the woods.